Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 19. This venerable one will tell you a story, Part 1. The girl was extremely pale, with an oval face and round eyes which were especially attractive. She was wearing a light pink skirt, her hair tied back. She looked like a young woman. She rubbed her eyes blankly in the dark, looking from side to side. "Where am I?" Chu Wanning said. "You are in an enchanted barrier I set up." The girl was taken aback and said fearfully, "Who are you? Why is it so dark here? I can't see you. Who's talking?" Chu Wanning replied, "Did you forget? You're already dead." The girl's eyes widened. I. Slowly, she remembered. Lowering her head, she folded her hands across her chest. She murmured in a soft, unwavering voice, I'm already dead. Only souls can come to the return to truth barrier. Here, the soul's hatred will be eliminated. No matter whether the dead person has transformed into a vicious ghost or an ordinary spirit, they will retain their original character and appearance while they were alive, as thus, it's caked return to truth. The girl was stunned for a moment, as if she was gradually remembering the past. Then she suddenly lowered her face and wept silently. Chu Wanning asked, "Have you been wronged?" The young girl sobbed, "Are you King Yan asterisk? Or Bai Vuchang asterisk? Are you here to avenge me?" Asterisk note, King Yan is the one who judged the dead, while Bai Vuchang is one of the deities that escort spirits to the underworld. Chu Wanning held his forehead and said, "I'm not King Yan or Bai Vuchang." The girl sobbed quietly. Chu Wanning was quiet for a while and didn't speak. He waited until her cries calmed down a bit and then said, "But I am here to help you air your grievances." When the girl heard this, she choked and raised her gaze, and said with a mixture of joy and sorrow, "Then you really are Lord Yama asterisk. Asterisk note, same person as King Yan." Chu Wanning decided not to continue this topic with her and instead asked, "Do you know what you've done after you died?" "I don't know, not really. I just remember that I was so sad. I wanted to get revenge. I wanted to go to them. I wanted to find him again." When the soul had just awakened, it would take a minute for all their memories to return to them, but it didn't matter. Chu Wanning patiently asked her, "Who did you want to find?" The girl whispered, "My husband, Chen Bohuan." Chu Wanning was astonished. Chen Bohuan, wasn't that the name of the eldest son of the Chen family? He asked, What's your name? Where are you from?" The power of Tianwen was infused in this enchanted barrier, and the ghost who entered would almost always talk honestly with Chu Wanning. Therefore, the girl replied, "I'm a concubine, Luo Xian. I'm from Kaidi Town. Before I came, I read the records of Kaidi Town. There are more than 500 households in this town, and there's no Luo family in it. Who is your father?" The girl slowly remembered the details, her eyes filling with even more sadness. "My father used to be a scholar in the village. He was a brother-in-law of my father-in-law. A few years ago, he contracted tuberculosis and passed away. Then I was the only one left from my family." "Then how did you die?" The young woman froze for a moment and then she sobbed, "Apart from death, I have no other option. They lied to my father and stole the secret recipe for the butterfly fragrance powder. They beat me and scolded me, threatened me, and told me to leave Kaidi Town. I'm but a weak woman, where else could I go? I didn't have a single relative left in this world. The world is so big, where could I go? Apart from the underworld, where else could I go? Where would there be room for me?" After she recalled the events of her life, she seemed to have infinite bitterness and sorrow in her heart. She was desperate to talk to someone. Chu Wanning didn't even have to ask anything else. She slowly continued on her own. It turned out that Luo Xian lost her mother when she was young. She heard from his father that she had an older brother, but her brother was separated from them in the chaos of the lower cultivation realm, and they never saw him again, so she didn't know whether he was dead or alive. When her elder brother was lost, Luo Xianxian wasn't even a year old and was still in swaddling clothes. Later, she tried to remember her elder brother, but she still had no recollection of him. There were only two people left in the Luo family, Xianxian and her father. The father and daughter depended on each other. They wandered around and finally built a small house in Kaidi town and lived there. That year, Luo Xianxian was 5 years old. The Chen family's oldest son, Chen Bohuan, was 2 years older than her. At that time, the Chen family hadn't made its fortune yet. Several members of the family lived in a 2-bedroom earth-rammed hut. An orange tree was planted by the low wall of the small courtyard. In autumn, the tree was full of fruit and it grew over the low wall and snuck into the Luo family's yard. Luo Xianxian tilted her head. The branches full of oranges looked like lanterns during the lantern festival. She was shy and reserved. She didn't play with others. She was always alone. She would dutifully be peeling some beans, raising her head from time to time and look at the orange tree peeking over from the Chen family's yard. The oranges were enticing and against the sunlight, you could almost taste the sweet and sour fullness of their juice. Luo Xianxian looked eagerly, gulping and swallowing from time to time. Her cheeks were sore from the cravings. But she never reached out to pick one. Her dad was a scholar who had been inferior to her brother-in-law of his father-in-law. He failed the exam, but he didn't lose his pride. He may be a failure as a scholar, but he had always told his daughter to observe propriety. At the age of 3, Luo Xianxian knew that wealth couldn't be lusted after and poverty couldn't be changed. She never reached out to pick the oranges that were close at hand, even though she craved for them. One night, Luo Xianxian sat in the courtyard humming and washing clothes by the moonlight. Her father wasn't very healthy, so he had to go to bed early. The poor man's child had to take charge of the house. The little girl rolled up her sleeves, soaked her thin arms in the barrel, and rubbed the laundry earnestly. Suddenly a hoarse cough came from the door, and a young man covered in blood staggered in and stared at her. The little girl was so frightened that she even forgot to scream. The young man's face was dirty and bloody, but his eyebrows were very handsome. The two people stood frozen staring at each other for a while. In the end, the young man couldn't stand up anymore. He sat down slowly against the base of the wall, panting, and said hoarsely, "Bring me some water." Su was that kind of young man who didn't look like a bad person, or perhaps Luo Xianxian was simply too kind-hearted. Although afraid, she still ran back to the house, made a cup of tea, and held it up to the young man's mouth. The young man wasn't very polite. He threw back his drink, then wiped the corner of his mouth. Rolling his eyes back, he stared at Luo Xianxian's pretty face. His eyes glazed over and he didn't speak for a while. Since he didn't speak, Luo Xianxian didn't either, she just blinked timidly. She held her hands at a distance she thought was safe enough and sized up the stranger. "You look like an old friend of mine." The young man suddenly grinned, squinted his eyes and smiled eerily. With the bloodstains on his face, it was really quite terrifying. Especially the eyes, they're so round. It looks like you could gouge them out, stick it in your fingers and swallow it in one bite. When he said such horrible words so casually while a little smile on his face, Luo Xianxian trembled even more, and subconsciously covered her eyes. The young man said, "Heh, clever girl. Just cover them up. Don't keep staring at me. I can't control my own hands." He spoke casually with a northern accent. Moonlight fell into the courtyard. The young man licked his chapped lips and suddenly saw the orange tree stretching into the yard. For some reason, his eyes lit up. His pupils flashed in the light, the luster brightening for a moment before dimming back down. He raised his chin and motioned. "Girl. Luo Xianxian. Pick an orange and peel it for me." Luo Xianxian finally spoke up. Her voice was soft, slightly trembling, but she didn't hesitate to say, "Sir, that's not my family's fruit tree. It belongs to someone else. I can't pick them." The young man was taken aback. She wasn't sure what went through his mind, but his face slowly dimmed. "I told you to pick one. I want to eat an orange. Pick it for me." The last phrase was harsh, like he spat it out through his teeth. Luo Xianxian shuddered, still stubbornly stood her ground. The little girl was soft-natured, but her bones were the same as her stubborn father. "I won't." The young man's eyes narrowed. He raised his nose, his expression changing. "Do you know who you're talking to, brat? If you want to have some water, I'll pour it for you. If you want to eat, there's some food inside, but the orange tree isn't mine. I can't pick it." Father said taking something without asking is stealing. "I'm a gentlewoman. Wealth can't be lusted after and poverty can't be changed. You can't fish." In her rambling, she started talking about fish instead. The half-grown girl blushed. She insisted on what her father had taught herself and ended up completely fumbling her words, but under the young man's gaze, she was violently trembling, and her legs were weak. The young man was speechless. Hearing such a little child, especially a young girl, say things as odd as taking without asking is stealing, wealth can't be lusted after and poverty can't be changed, and I'm a gentleman? He normally wouldn't be able to stop himself from laughing out loud. But he couldn't laugh. On the contrary, there was a strong resentment in his chest and his heart was being crushed like it was being trampled by a horse. "I hate your kind, so-called." He supported himself on the wall, shakily rising to his feet, and hissed out, "Proper, gentleman, hero, benevolent." Under Luo Xiangxian's horrified gaze, he slowly moved his injured foot. He moved over to the orange tree. He looked up, sniffed the smell of the orange tree almost greedily, and then a red gleam of rage flashed in his eyes. Before Luo Xianxian could react, he climbed the tree, shaking it, trampling, kicking, and hitting its branches. All the oranges on the branch crackled and fell to the ground, rolling away. The young man's smile was twisted and he shouted wantonly, "Taking something without asking is stealing. Wealth can't be lusted after. The mighty never yield." "Sir! What are you doing? Stop! Father! Father!" Luo Xianxian hadn't wanted to call for her father. Her father was a weak, powerless scholar, so there wasn't much he could do. But she was a little girl after all, and she was so terrified that she finally broke down. "What are you shouting about? Your father can come out and I'll cut him down if he did." The little girl was scared silly. Small water droplets rimmed her round eyes, tears forming. The Chen family next door went to a neighboring village to visit relatives, so the whole family was away. No one could stop this lunatic. The little madman shook the oranges all over the ground and still wasn't satisfied. He stomped on the ground several times, crushing several oranges, growing ferocious. She didn't know where he found the strength, but he jumped over the wall and flipped into the Chen's yard. In the courtyard, he found an axe and chopped down the whole tree. Then he turned around and cackled. He laughed and laughed, then abruptly stopped. From his squatting position, he suddenly straightened himself, staring blankly in a daze. Suddenly, he turned his head and waved to Luo Xianxian, "Girl, come here." Luo Xianxian didn't move. She was frozen on the spot, the little cloth shoes embroidered with yellow flowers digging into the ground. Seeing her hesitation, the young man calmed down his voice and said as sweetly as he could, "Come here. I have a treat for you." I don't want to go," Luo Xianxian mumbled. Before she finished speaking, the young man suddenly grew irritated again. "If you don't come here, I'll go into your house and slice up your father." Luo Xian trembled harshly but finally took small steps towards him. The young man squinted at her. "Hurry up, I'm not waiting all day. Luo Xianxian lowered her head and moved towards him. When she was still a few steps away, he suddenly stretched out his hand and violently pulled her over. Luo Xianxian let out a scream, but it only reached the back of her throat before something was shoved into her mouth to gag her. The young man stuffed an orange into her mouth. It wasn't peeled or washed, but covered in the dirt and pushed into her mouth. The young man tried to force her to eat it in one bite. The orange split open and was rotten inside. Half her face was covered in the rotten fruit, but the lunatic was still smiling. He crushed the fruit into her face, stuffing it into her mouth that she was desperately trying to keep closed. Aren't you a gentleman? I thought you didn't eat stolen food. So, what are you eating now? Huh? What are you eating now? No. I don't want. Father, father. Swallow it. The young man narrowed his eyes and stuffed the last bit of fruit into Luo Xianxian's mouth. His pupils gleamed with an eerie light and he shuddered. Swallow it. He watched Luo Xianxian forcibly swallow the orange. She softly called out father as she choked. The young man was silent for a while, then he suddenly smiled. That smile was more terrifying than his hideous face. He stroked Luo Xianxian's hair with satisfaction, squatting in front of her, and said softly, "What are you calling your father for? Shouldn't you be thanking me? Isn't the orange I gave you sweet? Was it delicious?" With that, he picked up another one off the ground. This time, he didn't stuff it in her mouth. He carefully peeled off the orange fruit and cleaned off all the white pits attached to it. Then he wiped his hands, broke off a piece, and brought it to Luo Xianxian's lips. He whispered, "If you like it, eat some more." Luo Xianxian knew that she had encountered a madman today. She had no choice but to lower her head and silently ate the orange that the madman handed her. The sweet and sour juice melted down her throat and her stomach churned. The young man squatted there, feeding her slices of oranges. He seemed to feel better and even started to gently hum a song. His voice was rough, very hoarse, like a broken gust of wind, vague and inaudible. Luo Xianxian could only make out a few words. 3 or 4 flowers fall into the pool, the bell chimes once or twice on the shore. The best thing is to be young, a light-footed horse, you can see the end of the world. He suddenly said, "Girl." Husky curled his lips and reached for Luo Xianxian's slender face, "Let me look at your eyes." Luo Xianxian shivered. She was powerless to resist. She could only let the young man inch forward, his bloody finger coming closer and closer to her eyes. "This is how it is," he said. Luo Xianxian whimpered and closed his eyes. She was really afraid that this madman might poke her eyes out on whim just like they were fruit. But the young man didn't poke them. He just coldly said to her, "Didn't you teach me the saying that wealth couldn't be lusted after and poverty couldn't be changed? I've also got something to tell you." Lu Xianxian, Open your eyes. Luo Xianxian's eyes were tightly closed. The young man laughed in exasperation and hissed, "Don't be like that. Open your eyes. Do you think I won't be able to gouge your eyes out if you have them closed?" Luo Xianxian forced her round eyes open, her slender eyelashes trembling, and tears streaming down her pitiful and fearful face. She wasn't sure how to make this stranger happy. He suddenly let go of her cheek, his hand lingering in the air, and then gently patted her head. He gazed into her eyes, and a trembling smile shook from the corner of his mouth. His smile was distorted, ferocious, and just a bit miserable. He said, "There are men in Linyi. 20 of them are dead." After he spoke, he turned around and his figure sank into the darkness and gradually disappeared. Only the mess on the ground was the only evidence that such there was person who were covered in blood that came here in the middle of the night. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 20. This venerable one will tell you a story, Part 2. Early the next morning, the members of the Chen family came back from visiting their relatives and saw that the orange tree in their courtyard had fallen down and the fruits scattered all over the ground. There weren't many other residents around them. They were only close with the Luo family. When they thought of how Luo Xianxian drooled over those oranges every day, the Chen family were sure. The oranges must have been stolen by that bastard child, Luo Xianxian. Not only did she steal them, but she got jealous and chopped down their orange tree. The Chen family immediately went to Luo Shizun to complain. Luo Shizun couldn't bear such humiliation. He immediately called his daughter over and asked her angrily if she stole the oranges. Luo Xianxian cried and said no. He asked if she had cut the tree down. Again, Luo Xianxian said no. He asked her if she had eaten the oranges. Luo Xianxian couldn't lie, so she had to admit that she did. Before she could explain though, her furious father ordered her to kneel down. She was beaten with a stick in front of the Chen family. While he beat her, he said, "Raising a daughter is much worse than raising a son. At such a young age, how could you do such a thing? Shame on you. You disgraced your father. As punishment, you won't have anything to eat today and you'll face the wall for 3 days. Reflect about your mistakes and repent." "Father, it wasn't me. It really wasn't me. How dare you talk back to me?" No one believed her. Although the lower cultivation world was in chaos, Kaidi town was an exception. The townspeople had always been simple and honest, so no one locked their door. What was she supposed to say, that a bloody lunatic came in the middle of the night? Who would believe her? Luo Xiangxian's small hands were split open from the beating. The members of the Chen family looked at her coldly. Among them, only the oldest boy, who were pulling at the corner of his mother's clothes, tried to hesitatingly speak. His mother ignored him and there was nothing he could do about it. The boy's small face scrunched up. He couldn't bear it, and he stood off to the side, unwilling to look any more. At night, Luo Xianxian didn't dare go back to her room, squatting under the eaves of her house, standing pitifully. Her father was a scholar and couldn't tolerate stealing. Moreover, he was a stubborn man, unwilling to listen to explanations. Luo Xiangxian, who had been hungry the whole day and was feeling dizzy. Suddenly she heard someone whispered, "Miss Luo." Luo Xianxian turned his head and saw a well-groomed head protruding from the edge of the dirt wall. It was Chen Bohuan, the eldest son of the Chen family, who tried to help her plead her case earlier. Chen Bohuan checked around to make sure no one was watching. He was carrying a hot steamed bun in his arms, and without saying a word, he shoved it into her hand. "I know you've been standing by the wall all day and haven't eaten anything. Here's a steamed bun. Hurry up and eat it." Luo Xianxian had always been shy. She had lived here for several months already but had never spoken to the neighbor's son. Now, they were so close together that when she inadvertently took a few steps back, she banged her head against the wall. Still, she stammered out, "I couldn't. Dad won't let me," he said. She was incoherent and couldn't even form a complete sentence. Chen Bohuan said, "Oh, your father can't be watching you at all times. What do you care what he's doing? If you're hungry, don't starve yourself. Eat it. If you don't, it'll get cold." The steamed bun was soft and white, looking so enticing with steam rising from it. Luo Xianxian looked down and stared for a while, taking a large gulp. She was so hungry, too. Regardless of whether she was supposed to be a gentlewoman or not, she grabbed the steamed bun and inhaled it, gobbling it up in no time. After eating it, she raised her round eyes and rushed to explain to Chen Bohuan, "I didn't cut down the orange tree, and I didn't steal any." Chen Bohuan was taken aback, and slowly smiled, "Okay. But they don't believe me." With such an emotional gaze, Luo Xiangxian's heart slowly opened, her anger melting away like snow. She wailed, her mouth wide open. She wiped her tears and wept loudly, "None of them believe me. I didn't steal. I didn't. Chen Bohuan patted her back. I know you didn't steal it. Like come on, you stand under the tree and stare at it every day yet you never took an orange. If you would, then you would have stolen some a long time ago. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Her crying became even more fiercer, tears and snot rolling on her face. Chen Bohuan consoled her, you didn't do it? I understand you didn't do it. The two children became closer to each other afterwards. Later, there was a murder in a neighboring village. A few nights after, a bandit covered in blood entered a family's home and wanted to borrow the family's bedroom to sleep. When the family did not agree, the bandit stabbed the whole family to death. Then, in the room full of corpses, he slept peacefully and leisurely left the next day in broad daylight. When he went away, he even left a message written in blood on the wall. He wrote out a large message, detailing everything he had done to make sure the world knew that an evil individual like him existed. This tragedy immediately spread like wildfire, and soon reached Kaidi town. That was the night Luo Xianxian claimed she had met a madman. Luo Shuzheng and the Chen family were speechless. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, the two families' relation improved. The Chen family saw that Luo Xianxian was a hard-working little beauty. They thought that, based on their current situation, it would be difficult to find a daughter-in-law, so they quickly arranged the marriage of Chen Bohuan and Luo Xianxian. Once they reached adulthood, they could be officially wed. When Luo Shuzheng saw that his daughter and Chen Bohuan were good childhood friends, so he readily agreed. It had come to pass that if it weren't for Luo Shushan's love of elegance and fragrance, then the Chen and Luo families would have lived their whole lives in poverty and humility as were originally expected. Luo Shuzheng accidentally made the 100 butterfly fragrance powder. Although the scent of the powder was nothing special and it wasn't much different from the typical powders in town, it had an extraordinary feature compared to others. Its scent would linger for 100 days. 100 butterfly fragrance powder lasts for a long time and it didn't wear off easily. It was exactly what everyday people were looking for in terms of good quality and low price. However, Lu Shuzheng believed that scholarly pursuit is of utmost importance and everything else is inferior. Although he had made the 100 butterfly fragrance powder, he didn't want to sell it thinking that his scholarly reputation would suffer if he did so. Madame Chen repeatedly tried to get the recipe of the powder out of him and urged Luo Shuzheng to open a shop, but she was always rejected. After several times of this back and forth, Madame Chen got embarrassed, so she stopped bringing it up again, but she silently always kept it in mind. The year Luo Xianxian reached adulthood, the opportunity came. Luo Shushan's sickly body had contracted tuberculosis. He suffered for a few days then died. As Luo Xianxian's in-laws, even though she wasn't officially their daughter-in-law yet, the Chen family helped her arrange the funeral since their relationship are quite close. Luo Xianxian burst into tears of gratitude. What she didn't know was that Madame Chen had planned to quietly take the powder's secret recipe while she packed up Luo Shushan's things. On the same night that she got it, Madame Chen excitedly opened up the scroll to read the recipe under the light of a soybean oil lamp. However, after a single glance, she found herself at a loss. Luo Shushan's words danced across the page with calligraphy that typically would be considered elegant and unrestrained. She stared at it for a long time, but she couldn't understand half of the words. She had no choice but to return the scroll quietly. A few months later, after Luo Xianxian had a chance to grieve, Madame Chen invited the girl over to their house for dinner and inadvertently mentioned the 100 butterfly fragrance powder in a passing conversation. Luo Xianxian thought to herself there was no point in keeping the recipe at home. Her mother-in-law treated her so well. If she wanted it, then she would give it to her. So, she looked for it in her father's things and helped Madame Chen to understand the literature written by her father and sort out the exact recipe. Madame Chen was ecstatic. When she got the recipe, she and her husband opened a fragrant powder shop together. Of course, she was still very fond of her gentle and sensible prospective daughter-in-law. The more Luo Xianxian grew, the more beautiful she became. Although her family was poor, her looks were some of the best in town, and many young people in the town began to pay attention to her. A long night is filled with dreams *, Madame Chen thought to herself. They need to hurry and secure the marriage. Note, means that the longer something is put off, the more likely something will happen before you're able to do it. However, Luo Xianxian just lost his father. According to the custom of Kaidi town, she couldn't get married for 3 years after the death of her parent. How could Madame Chen wait for 3 years? So, she deliberated and thought of a way. One day, Luo Xianxian was braiding the hair of the Chen's family young daughter. She had a very good relationship with the youngest Chen daughter. Luo Xianxian pulled the hair over and under, and the braid trailed down her back. Madame Chen walked into the courtyard and called Luo Xianxian to the inner hall. She said to her, "Xianxian, you and Bohuan were childhood sweethearts and are already betrothed for a while. Now that your father is gone, you must be lonely. It can't be easy living by yourself. You should be getting married this year. But because of the 3-year mourning period, we cannot proceed with the ceremony. So I was thinking, if you wait for 3 years, how old are you going to be?" Luo Xianxian lowered her head. She didn't say anything, but she was clever and could guess what Madame Chen was insinuating. Her cheeks grew slightly red. Sure enough, Madame Chen went on to say, "Living alone must be so difficult and tedious. How about this, you two get married behind closed doors. No one needs to know. If anyone asks, just say that you're living with this auntie to help care for her and preparing to be her daughter-in-law. This will not only complete the wedding rituals without the worry of being criticized, but also give your father some peace in the underworld. After the 3-year period is up, we'll have a beautiful proper wedding ceremony for you two. What do you think?" Her remarks sounded like she cared about Luo Xianxian. Luo Xianxian was a person who always saw the best in others and would never think badly about someone else, so she agreed. Later, the Chen family made a fortune by selling the 100 butterfly fragrance powder. They moved out of their old house, bought a large piece of land in town, built a mansion on it, and became a powerful family. Luo Xianxian had become a shadow among the many figures of the large household, an insignificant presence. People in the town thought that Luo Xianxian had been taken in by Madame Chen, so she lived in the Chen house. They didn't know that she was actually married to Chen Bohuan. Although it wasn't perfect, Luo Xianxian thought that her mother-in-law was doing this for her own good so that people wouldn't gossip, so she didn't complain. In addition, Chen Bohuan was dear to her. The couple was living a sweet and fulfilling life. They only need to wait for the 3-year period to pass, then everything would return to normal. But Luo Xianxian has waited in vain. The Chen family business was growing larger and larger. In addition, Chen Bohuan was handsome. Not just in Kaidi town, but even the daughters of the prominent families in the surrounding towns had begun to play with the idea of marrying young Master Chen. With this development, Madame Chen's mind was racing. Back then, she decided to secure Luo Xianxian because she thought she wouldn't be able to find a good daughter-in-law when they were nothing but a farming family. Who would have thought that the heavens would bless the Chen family and allow them to soar into high society? Now, when she looked back at Luo Xianxian, she felt that the girl was not good-looking enough and that she wasn't very intelligent. Like her dead father, she was unpleasant to look at. She started to regret her decision a bit. The appearance of Yao Qianjin turned her a bit into a lot. Yao Qianjin is the daughter of the county magistrate. One day, as she returned from hunting on top of a horse, she passed by an incense shop and picked out a few fragrance powders. It didn't matter what fragrances she picked out, but she caught a glimpse of the busy handsome young man in the hall. That young man was no other than Luo Xianxian's husband, Chen Bohuan. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 21. This venerable one will tell you a story, part 3. Yao Qingjin was a decisive person. When she got back home, she didn't even think about eating and went straight to pestering her father to inquire about Chen Bohuan. Although Chen Bohuan was already married, it was done behind closed doors. Who knew about it? Even when their marriage had been arranged, the town never knew about their actual relationship. So when they inquire in town, Yao Qingjin learned that the eldest Chen's son was not married yet. The county magistrate made several inquiries and found that Xiao Chen was a capable, gentle-tempered man and his familial situation was good, so he sent someone to talk to the Chen family about the marriage. Chen Yuanwei was filled with regret. Him and his wife politely told the county magistrate that they would think about it first. As soon as they see their guests out, the old couple immediately started to argue. Chen Yuanwei said, "Look at what you've done. When that poor scholar died, his daughter should have mourned him for 3 years. If you hadn't been in such a hurry for them to get married, our son wouldn't have to regret it now. Look at what happened." Madam Chen was also anxious. "You're blaming me? Weren't you the one who wanted to arrange the marriage in the first place? Now that there's a better option, the daughter of the county magistrate. Can Luo Xianxian compare to that?" The two elders closed the door and quarreled until they were red in the face. At the end of the quarrel, they were exhausted and panting across the table from each other. Chen Yuanwei asked, "What should we do? Should we call back the magistrate?" Madam Chen said, "We can't do that. Our family cannot afford to offend Yao Qingjin." Chen Yuanwei said angrily, "Then will the daughter of the Yao family be a concubine? Will she accept that? Our son already has somebody, how can we add another? Look at how in love they are." Madam Chen didn't say anything for a while. Her eyes suddenly lit up, and she murmured, "About Luo Xianxian and our son, except for our family, no one really knows about them." After a few moments of silence, Chen Yuanwei was shocked when he suddenly understood his wife's intentions. He was trembling, half from panic, half from anger. You mean? If no one knows about it, it doesn't count as a real marriage?" Madam Chen said. "Let's try to find a way to get rid of her. We can do whatever it takes. Everyone else, including those at the surrounding villages, think he's unmarried. Do you remember how she stole oranges from us as a child? As long as we all stick to that story, no one would believe her word over ours." Chen Yuanwei strode to the door, confirmed that the door was closed tightly and hurriedly rushed over. The two people who had been arguing like two chickens in a cockfight were nestled together again, quietly lowering their voices, and discussed. Chen Yuanwei said, "This method of yours, I'm afraid it won't work." "What's wrong with it?" asked Madam Chen. "Our son won't agree. He have liked Luo Xianxian his whole life. Why would he agree to drive her away for someone else?" Madam Chen thought for a while. She patted her husband's hand and said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." After a while, Madam Chen suddenly became seriously ill. It was a strange illness. The doctor couldn't explain the reason, but she just would have fits all day and talked nonsense, saying she was possessed by a ghost. Chen Yuanwei was terrified, so he asked a Daoist priest to come. He carried a whisk on his back and said that there was something negative in the Chen family and it's directed at Madam Chen. If it wasn't resolved, Madam Chen wouldn't make it to the new year. Chen Bohuan, who was the most filial, anxiously asked, "What attacked my mother?" The Daoist priest pretended to be mysterious and hesitated for a while. He said it was a beauty who couldn't see the light of day. Everyone in the room froze. The Chen family's sons all turned to look at Luo Xianxian standing on the side. Luo Xianxian also froze. She has been told many times when she was a child that her life is cursed. She brought tragedy with her. As soon as she was born, she killed her mother, then her brother, and later her father. Now, she was being accused again, saying that she was going to kill her mother-in-law. The Chen family was petrified. The sons took turns telling her to leave the Chen family. Besides, no one outside the family knew that she was married and had an innocent reputation. They would give her some money and let her find another good family. Luo Xianxian was anxious and afraid. She was really worried that she was killing Madame Chen and she couldn't control her tears. Chen Bohuan was heartbroken. As he watched his mother grow weaker, he was caught between a rock and a hard place. He didn't want to leave Luo Xianxian, but he couldn't bear to watch his mother suffer. She had lost so much weight in such a short amount of time. The brothers of the Chen family quit trying to be polite. One day, while their eldest brother was away, they sought out their sister-in-law. Luo Xianxian was mixing butterfly fragrant powder in the greenhouse. They rushed up and knocked over her utensils. The fragrant powder fell on her. The pungent aroma seemed to instantly seep into her bones and she couldn't wash it off. The brothers surrounded her and talked about the most important duties, such as a woman's virtue, how a wife and daughter should be humble, parents should be respected, but Luo Xianxian was very tough. Although timid, she was very stubborn. She cried and said she didn't want to leave, begging them to think of another way. The second son of the Chen family was impatient, so he went up and slapped her. He said, "You're going to kill our mother, you cursed bitch. If there was another way, would your father have died? Would your mother have died? Would your brother be dead or alive?" As soon as he beat her, the rest of them rushed up, punching and kicking Luo Xianxian, shouting things like "Get out, vermin and whore." These sons had the same idea as their mother. In fact, they had known about their mother's idea for a long time. At this time, taking advantage of their eldest brother's absence, they worked together to throw Luo Xianxian away from the house. They threatened that if she dared to come back, they would beat her every day. She didn't have a family anyways. If she was beaten to death, no one would care. It was a snowy night. Luo Xianxian was thrown into the snow covered in bruises and one of the embroidered shoes on her feet had fallen off. She slowly crawled forward, a muffled choke sob escaping her lips, like the low howl of a dying cub. It was late at night. Few people would be outside on such a snowy day. She crawled through the vast world, not knowing where she was going, not knowing where else she could go. The Chen brothers were right. She had no family, no father, no brother. No one would stand up for her, no one would take her in. There was nowhere she could go in this wide world. Her body and constitution were weak and she was wearing thin clothes when she was thrown out, so her legs and feet quickly became numb and useless. Crawling all the way to the outskirts of the city, she came to the earth temple where the master of ceremonies deity was enshrined. She curled up in the temple to hide from the snow. Her lips were blue and frozen, and her heart felt even colder. Looking up at the clay statue with gorgeous red makeup, she couldn't stop the tears rolling down her face. It made her think of the rules of the lower cultivation world, and how a married couple should have a master of ceremonies to witness it. At that time, all she had was a red flower hairpin, a beautiful smile and Chen Bohuan kneeling next to her. Was this closed-door marriage all a big dream? That day, the beauty in the brass mirror was picturesque. Was it just an illusion that she had concocted deep in her mind? She knelt in front of the master of ceremonies deity, dragging her increasingly heavier and cold body. She bowed 3 times, crying and laughing. Married as husband and wife. No doubt about their love. Rejoice, in this, tonight. She started to feel dizzy and her vision was getting blurry. A thin layer of moonlight seemed to sprinkle in front of her eyes. In the small courtyard from her past, she cried and said, "I didn't steal. I didn't steal. I didn't steal the oranges." However, 3 men make a tiger asterisk and everyone was terrified. No one would believe her side of the story. Asterisk note, means that the more someone repeats something absurd, the more likely people are to believe it. To this day, She knew that even if she ran up to every person she saw and screamed that she was Chen Bohuan's wife, no one would believe her. It was just like before when she was still a little girl. She is stuck behind the mud wall with no one to share her grievances with. Nothing had changed. But there was still that person, looking over the wall, holding a white steamed bun, stuffed into her palm, saying, "If you're hungry, eat a steamed bun to curb your hunger." Now, that person, where was he? When he came back and couldn't find her, would he be worried, or would he secretly breathe a sigh of relief because his mother would be safe from her? Luo Xianxian curled up in the earth temple, eyes dripping with gradually drying tears, and whispered, "Madam Master of Ceremonies, I want to be with him. I'm his wife. When we came to the temple, we didn't have a master of ceremonies with us. You're a master of ceremonies deity. You can't control the living, but I. You're the only one I can talk to, and I can tell you." She whimpered in a broken voice, the last sound coming out of her throat, "I didn't lie. I didn't lie." The heavy snow was silent, and the long night was quiet. The next day, the townspeople who passed by the earth temple on the outskirts of the city found Luo Xianxian's cold body. End chapter.